present you with a picture of the ring, Wagner's ring, in just a few words. Here's the Rheingold, the Valkyrie, Siegfried, and Götterdämmerung. And here is the Rheingold is nature violated, and then the Valkyrie is love lost, as Wotan pushes away Brunhilde, abandons her on the mountaintop. And then Siegfried is love found again, as Siegfried picks up Brunhilde on the mountaintop. And then Götterdämmerung is the restoration of nature, as by the sacrifice of Siegfried and Brunhilde, nature is restored. And the first two operas, Wotan is at the centre. The last two operas, Siegfried is at the centre. And in between Siegfried and Wotan is Brunhilde. And the woman is the pivot. Brunhilde is like the pivot of the ring. And first she is the daughter of her father, and then she is the bride of Siegfried. And first she is belongs to the gods, and then she belongs to the humans. And the whole of the ring is about the replacing of the false order of the gods with a true order of human beings, except that the order of human beings, the beautiful new order of human beings, Wagner is honest enough as to recognize that it's destroyed because of the wickedness of men. Father just mentioned to me original sin. Original sin is a crucial Catholic doctrine. And it's the doctrine that as Adam fell, provoked by Eve, but I can't say that if I'd been at Adam's place, I would have resisted. So, we can't say, none of us, I think, can say that, we would have been good boys in Adam's place, but in any case. As Adam fell, mysteriously, in some mysterious way, the whole of human nature fell with Adam. The whole of human nature, which was contained in Adam, because he was the fountainhead of the human race. The whole of human nature fell with Adam. It's very mysterious. It's not a personal sin. It's not a sin of which we were personally guilty, but it's a sin that goes with our nature. And it has a tremendous effect upon life and, for instance, education. And a mother was just saying to me, family. If you believe, the modern belief is that all human beings are nice, all human beings are good, and we're just enough sweet education, light of the seal, everybody, every citizen is going to want the good of mankind. I mean, it's ridiculous. Given original sin, it's ridiculous. We do not naturally go for what is good. We naturally go for what is bad. It takes an effort for us to go for what is good. Some sinful boy said the other day, I can't remember, where was it? Where was that? I think it was in Ireland. Some young man said to the priest, "It's so much easier to be bad," he said. No, that's true. It's much easier to be bad because of original sin. And that's why Catholic education takes into consideration original sin. Boys and girls need discipline. They need discipline. They need punishment. The Old Testament says, spare the rod and spoil the child. If you don't discipline children, they will grow up wrong. Children are naughty and they need to be punished. And Scripture says so. It's common sense. But modern man is getting rid of common sense. Modern man is pretending that all of us are wonderful and sweet and nice, and that's the seal, basically. All of us are wonderful and sweet and nice. If only we're given a chance, then we will all be sweet and wonderful. And therefore modern education is don't discipline the children because they don't need it. And the result is a disaster. As the mother was saying to me, the father must exercise authority in the family. The family needs authority, and it's the man that must exercise authority over the children and over his wife. She needs it. She needs it. She's not a rational creature. She's not a creature that goes by reason. She goes by her feelings. If she needs she needs reason to lead. So she needs the husband to lead. But that's an old-fashioned idea of the part of man. That's how everybody used to think. But in our crazy century, in our crazy modern world, people think the exact opposite. They think everything is falling to pieces. It's very serious. Very, very serious. And of course the newspapers, the vile newspapers, are pushing always in the liberal direction. But that's a punishment we've deserved. So, let's have a look at the seal.
I think it's a little like
It's a small print. There it is. Okay, thanks. This one is easy to read. So, let's continue the refutation of the Sion doctrine. Remember, the doctrine is the crucial section. In any of the papal encyclicals, when they're talking about the doctrine, that's the most important. The action always follows the doctrine. It's what you think, it's what you hold to be true that will govern how you act. And so the popes sort out the doctrine in order to sort out the action. The refutation, in general, the Sion rests on false notions contrary to Catholic truth. Now the Pope is beginning to tell, instead of the Sion nonsense, he's going to tell the Catholic truth. In truth, authority in society neither comes from the people, nor does it reside in the people. Authority comes from God. It can only come from God. There's no authority that does not come from God. It comes from God through the chief policeman, through the head of the family, through the president of the nation, through the king, through the prince, through whoever. But the authority comes from God. And no authority does not come from God. It does not come from below. Authority cannot come from below. That's against the nature of authority. Authority is necessarily above, and ultimately that's God. Nor is obedience either diminishing or degrading or degenerate. So he goes on to liberty, equality, fraternity. It's not diminishing to obey. It's not degrading to obey. It's not degenerate to obey. It can be very noble to obey. I can remember once I was visiting a shrine of Our Lady in Austria. I've forgotten the name. It's down in Burgenland, south of Vienna. The Rasenkreuz. There was a cross in the lawn, in the grass. And I can remember a young Austrian army soldier, maybe an officer, I can't remember. This young Austrian, he was in military uniform. And he arrived, and he took off his cap, and he knelt down. It was a noble act. He knelt down in front of the cross on the lawn, the Rasenkreuz. And he took off his hat in honor. And you could see, it was a noble act. The obedience and the respect was noble. It wasn't degrading or degenerate in any way. And this idea that for me to obey somebody is degenerate or it degrades me is completely false. It's not Catholic. It's false. It's noble to obey God and to honor God and to love God. It's obvious. And then, similarly, inequality is not unjust. It's not unjust for the blacks to be good at some things and the whites to be good at other things. It's not unjust for some stones to be at the top of the building and some stones at the bottom of the building. It's necessary. To form a building, to build a building, it's necessary for some of the stones to be at the top and some of the stones below. So to form a mankind, it's necessary for some of the races to be occupied with higher things, some of the races to be occupied with lower things. But when all of these races go in front of the judgment seat of God, they're all going to be equal. It's necessary for men to tell women what to do, but it's also absolutely necessary for men to obey God. But it's necessary for men to be the head and for the woman to be the heart. And men today are not the head. Men have rejected Christ, they've rejected God, and therefore naturally the women reject the men. It's completely understandable. It's completely normal. It's tragic. But the problem for many women today is the men. Men, don't blame the women, blame yourselves. Whites, don't blame the blacks, blame yourselves. Catholics, don't blame the Jews, blame yourselves, because that's where the problem is. I am the problem. Inequality is not unjust, and therefore democracy is not the only form of government. God creates inequality throughout his creation. There are no two flowers that are equal. The rose, if a garden was only roses, it would be boring. But there's all kinds of flowers in God's creation. And a beautiful garden is composed of all of the flowers together. And there's even a place for the little daisy. The daisy, one daisy is beautiful if you look at it. It takes this little humble place. And then there's the rose, of course, has got pure perfume as well. There's a place where all of the flowers together make a symphony, like all of the instruments in an orchestra. But they have to be directed and unified. As for fraternity, brotherhood, if you don't have Christ, and if you don't have Christian charity, it will destroy civilization. Somebody once tried to explain communism to Winston Churchill, to explain undoubtedly how communism is going to make everybody equal, it's going to make everybody free, it's going to make everybody, and so on, and so on, and so on. And Winston Churchill had a good deal of common sense. He wasn't a Catholic hero. He wasn't Catholic. He wasn't a hero of Catholics. But he had some common sense. And he snorted and he said, Christianity with a tomahawk. Tomahawk is that thing of the Indians, with a stone attached to a wooden handle with which the Indians used to beat and kill their enemies. So Churchill realized that communism was an instrument of death and hatred. It wasn't what it pretended to be, brotherhood and love. He could see it. He could see through it. And that's brotherhood without Christ. If we don't all have God as our Father, we're going to be murderous brothers. We need to know that God is our Father, to love one another as brothers. And so, brotherhood without Christ, without Christian charity, is going to destroy civilization. Says the Pope knew it. In 1910, communism had not yet broken out. It was only in 1917, but he could see that the way these ideas would go: murder, death, blood in the streets. And today, the blood in the streets is very close. The order, I was saying yesterday, I think the social order in the United States, for instance, could easily break down. You've got a whole lot of people, masses and masses of people living in the big city, dependent upon the trucks bringing in food to the supermarkets, and then dependent upon government green stamps to be able to get the food in the supermarkets. If the government has no more money and can't pay the green stamps, if the trucks have no more diesel fuel because they're buying petrol and don't bring the food into the supermarkets, there are going to be food riots and death. People are going to kill in order to be able to eat. The situation in the United States, I was saying yesterday, Congress had a special meeting behind locked doors, I think it was in March, when undoubtedly all of the members of Congress were considering what they're going to do when order breaks down, when there's a serious breakdown of order. We're very close to that. You know, we've had this material prosperity ever greater since World War II. Coming out of World War II in 1945, it's now been over 60 years. 45 to 2005 is 63 years of quote-unquote peace and prosperity, material prosperity. But it's without God. And it's against nature. It's living in defiance of what St. Pius X calls the laws of human nature. It can't last. It's doomed. Don't be surprised when it breaks down. And be prepared to explain to people who are going to be very confused what's happening. Many are going to be tempted to blame God. They're going to say it's his fault. It isn't. It's our fault. But people aren't going to understand when it all breaks down. People think the supermarkets go on forever, the food trucks, the food lorries go on forever. It's our right, they think. We have a right to all of these things. We have a right not to work. We have a right to government support. We have a right to the government paying for everything. Well, it's breaking down. It's breaking down right now. 25 is a crucial paragraph. Like number 11, it's got a little cross against it. In sum, in brief, to sum up, man's dignity does not consist in his prideful independence. It's a great paragraph. I wish I had it here. I forgot to bring the text of the sermon. It's a great paragraph. And that's the truth of the matter. The greatness of man consists in his closeness to God. The dignity of man consists in his state of grace. And the quality of man consists in how close he is to God, how full he is of God, how much of God he has in him. That's where the real dignity and value of man consists. And modern men are just wiping God out. They don't want anything to do with it. Then we move on to the action of the Sion, which follows on their doctrine. Their action, we can say, firstly, inside their organization, within the Sion, and then inside the church. And Pope Pius X will explain how their action is going to change the church, which is exactly what's happened. I say these ideas, which surfaced at that time inside the Sion, but which are being very widespread, which also surfaced very much in Vatican II. The same ideas: liberty, equality, fraternity without Christ, man, independence, dignity, the human dignity, without regard for God, simply because we are human beings. That's Vatican II. With a right to choose what religion we like, regardless of what religion God set in place. Always man in front of God. The religion of man, Vatican II, instead of the religion of God, Catholicism. These are the ideas of Vatican II to a considerable extent. So the deficiencies. Putting these errors into practice, the Sion has no internal hierarchy. It has no organization inside. In theory, I was saying to you, actually in practice, as any organization needs, Marc Saulnier was a very strict number one. And you had to do it his way inside the Sion. His way or the highway. But in theory, they were against authority. And therefore, in theory, they were spreading this idea of dissolving authority, which means to dissolve society and to dissolve the church. To dissolve the parish, to dissolve the diocese, to dissolve the church. Hence, in other words, to their indiscipline, indocility, in obedience, hence too, there's a double. There follows also, hence too, their indiscipline, their lack of discipline, their lack of docility, and their lack of obedience towards the church. They were docile, disciplined, and obedient towards Marc Saulnier, but not towards the Catholic Church. And therefore they preferred the liberal guru to the wisdom of the Church of 2,000 years. That's a very serious mistake. The Church is wise. Mother Church is wise. Mother Church, if it's the doctrine, if it's the teaching of the Church, it's got 2,000 years behind it. Many today, the Society has schools, little schools all over, the Society of Vice Tenth has little schools all over the world. Some secondary schools, many primary schools. And the parents bring their children to the school, the Society school. But the parents bring their liberal ideas, and they won't submit to the priests and the sisters of the Society who say, look, this is what we know, because of original sin, this is how we know that the church, that the school must be run. And the liberal parents don't believe it. It's sad, but that's how it often is. The liberal parents may be of goodwill, of course. They may mean well, they have good intentions, but they're refusing the teaching of the church. Usually, the Society priests are not saying anything or teaching anything that the church has not taught for 2,000 years. And then it's not just the priests, it's the whole church that they're teaching. But today's parents, infected with these modern and revolutionary ideas, they don't understand. It's sad. In all over the world, our priests say, you can educate the children. It's the parents that you can't educate. It's sad. But the parents, this generation of parents, did not have the church to teach them about original sin and to teach them the need for discipline, to teach them that little Johnny is not only a little angel, he's also a little monkey. And the little monkey is going to need to have his little bottom warmed every now and again, because he's going to need discipline. And if he's not given discipline, little Johnny is going to turn into a little horror. But the parents don't understand. My Johnny is an angel. And it's all the fault of you teachers. Because my Johnny's... Parents today don't accept that their little children have original sin. It's unbelievable. Because they haven't been taught that every one of us has original sin. There you are. The Sion, in fact, another famous paragraph, 29, the Sion, in fact, spells revolution. It's revolution against church and against God. It looks sweet, it looks nice, it looks progressive, it looks for the future, it looks all kinds of nice things, sugar and spice and all things nice, but the Pope, who's got the wisdom of the church, says this is revolution. This is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Watch out, people. If you get eaten by this wolf, don't be surprised. I warned you. It's a wolf, it's not a sheep. It's a wolf with... Our Lord said, beware of wolves in sheep's clothing. The Sion is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Vatican II is a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's a whole pack of wolves in sheep's clothing. And then he goes on to the action within the church. Then it's not only an action inside the little organization, it's an action inside the church. The deficiencies inside the church, and then the conclusion. Despite its claims, 30, the Zionist action is not acceptable to the church. It claims to be Catholic, it claims to be helping the Catholic Church to understand the modern world, it claims to be helping the Catholic Church forward. In fact, it's doing nothing of the kind. It's going to destroy the Catholic Church, exactly like Vatican II. Vatican II pretended to be a renovation of the church, a renewal of the church, and in fact it was a destruction of the church. First, the Sion ties the church to democracy. In other words, the Sion says all Catholics must believe that the only right form of government is democracy. A false democratism. The Pope says, no way. Democracy is not the only form of government. Today, democracy is a religion. It's a substitute religion. And the Americans in particular, who've not got their heads screwed on, want to spread democracy like they spread a crusade or spread a religion. They're evangelizing for democracy. This stupid President Bush, for instance, and like many presidents before him, he's crusading for the spread of... He's destroyed Iraq in the name of democracy, getting rid of and then hanging Saddam Hussein. That's a crime, absolute crime. And look at the mess that Iraq is in. And it's all in the name of these false, stupid ideas. Iraq needs an Iraqi leader, a number one. Saddam Hussein was the number one. He had faults. But Iraq was much happier under Saddam Hussein than it's ever been ever since. And then the legal, the putting him in front of a court and then hanging him is a crime. Absolute crime. It's a grave injustice. All in the name of democracy, in the name of the newspapers, in the name of these false ideals. Because he wasn't democratic. You can't run a country like Iraq by democracy. It doesn't work. It's not working in the United States and in Great Britain. It's not really democracy in the United States or Great Britain. It's what you call a cryptocracy. In other words, a rule of hidden people, kryptos in Greek. ruled by hidden people. There's a secret minority that's working, especially to manipulate the newspapers. The newspapers manipulate public opinion, and public opinion runs the politicians and runs the quote-unquote democracy. And it's all done by a secret little group of very clever, very smart, and very criminal people in all of the Western quote-unquote democracies. Many of you already know that. But of course, the vile media, the media are horrible, absolutely horrible. And they are the instruments of quote-unquote democracy. They are the instruments of these the prime instruments of these false ideas, television and newspapers. You can still get quite a lot of truth on the internet. They haven't yet shut down the truth on the internet, but they must be trying, and trying very hard. The internet is a chaos, but if you know where to look, you can find still much truth that you can't find in the television and newspapers. All the television, all the newspapers pretend that 9/11 was the Arabs. It wasn't anything of the kind. And they still lie about it. President Kennedy was assassinated in 1963, and the media are still lying about his assassination to pretend that it was the work of Lee Harvey Oswald. It wasn't at all. It was a French hit team, a triangular hit team. 2 gunmen behind and 1 in front, and it was the one in front who killed him with a bullet that went in the front and blew out the back. And then the newspapers pretended that it was because he was bent over and the bullet hit him. How the newspapers lie, and yet people believe. They believe their newspapers. Here in Sweden, I hope they believe them less. But, no, who was telling me that somebody, the DDR, the Deutsche Demokratische Republik, who was telling me that at lunch today? Somebody was saying that this East German lady who made a film about the ship sunk between Estonia and Sweden, and she made a film about it, Jörgen Brutter, name like that. Somebody was telling me, Jutta Rabe, that she was shocked. She said in the Deutsche Demokratische Republik, they all know that the newspapers lie. She said she came to Sweden and she was shocked that the Swedish people believe in their newspapers. So maybe it's worth living in a communist country in order to learn that the newspapers lie, to understand that the newspapers lie. We in the Western democracies, quote unquote, we're stupid. Spelled S-T-O-O-P-I-D. We are stupid. We are. We are dead stupid. We don't know how stupid we are. Oh, that's... The Sion ties the church to democracy. The church, the Catholic Church, with the wisdom of 2,000 years, says you can perfectly well have a monarchy, you can perfectly well have an aristocracy, or you can have a democracy, but in any case, the essential thing is for everybody to recognize that authority comes from God and not from people. But the idea of modern democracy is that the authority comes from the people. That's wrong. It's socially wrong. Then in public, the Zionist is, as such, as Sion, neutral in matters of religion. In other words, as an organization of young students and then workers as well, the Sion says, it doesn't matter what religion you belong to, just so long as you believe in democracy and liberty and equality and fraternity and the Sion, you're fine, come and join in. That's deadly. In other words, that's saying the Catholic faith doesn't matter. That's saying the truth doesn't matter. When you start saying the truth doesn't matter, you join in the modern world the mush. People who don't have anything to think with in their head, it's just a soup that they have in their head. Ideas don't matter. That's the end of the line. They call it in French la fin dialectique. That's the end of the beans. La fin dialectique. You know, when people can't think anymore, and I was saying from the first one, there's lots of people that have lost the ability to think. They don't think anymore. It's incredible. Especially the men don't think. That the women don't think. Well, you know, that's sort of normal. I mean, you don't expect the women to think. But the men don't think is real trouble. The Sion, and then the greater Sion opens the Sion wide to embrace all creeds. So what the Pope is describing is how the Sion, the organization, evolved, and it evolved in the direction of saying not only you don't need to be a Catholic, but you don't need, it doesn't matter what religion you belong to, and you can even be an atheist. That's exactly John Paul II. John Paul II went into the middle of the African jungle and shook hands with the black magicians, the voodooists, saying to them they respected the values of their ancestors. And therefore we can get on because, John Paul II is that. John Paul II is this. And this is Pius X in 1910. He nailed all these ideas long before Vatican II. But the ideas still won out. These ideas won. And these ideas are now ruling the world. And they're crazy. The world is gone mad. So to embrace all creeds and then open wider still to become a fraternity of any idealism at all. Just so long as you want a better state of affairs, just so long as you long for something better and hope for something better, you can join in the greater seal. It doesn't matter if you have any belief, or it doesn't matter if you believe that Jesus Christ is God. It doesn't matter if you believe that he founded just the Catholic Church. It doesn't matter if you're a Protestant. It doesn't matter if you're Orthodox. None of that matters. Ideas don't matter. Truth doesn't matter. Just so long as you're sweet and nice and joining the party, then we'll all have a great party together. Madness. Madness. It matters tremendously what you believe. It matters tremendously whether you believe what's true or you believe what's false. If you don't believe that Jesus Christ is God, then you are rejecting the incarnation. You're rejecting that everything that God did in order to save us human beings. You're rejecting salvation. You're rejecting heaven. You're setting everybody who you get to listen to, who you can get to listen to you, you're setting everybody who you can get to listen to on the road to hell. It's clear. You're going to produce hell on earth. It matters enormously whether you believe the truth that Jesus Christ is God, is God, a divine person who also took a human nature, in addition to his divine nature, which he never lost, of course. It matters tremendously whether you believe that or if you believe he was just a great human being. It matters enormously. But for the Sion and for the ecumenists and for the new church, Vatican II, it doesn't matter. Just as long as you're idealistic and hope and you're nice and you forget it. Therefore, 36, another key paragraph. The Sionists are not indifferent to beliefs. They believe in indifferentism. Indifferentism is the error, the very grave error, that it doesn't make any difference what belief you hold. That's the modern world. That's mush between the ears. Slush and mush. The words have, do you know in Swedish, slush and mush? It's like the snow after 2 or 3 days on the streets. It's a sort of kind of soup. A soup. People have soup in their minds. They don't have brains. Just so long as you feel good. Just so long as you feel it. That's Luther. It doesn't matter how much I sin, just so long as I have a nice, warm, chocolate feeling in my breast. Just so long as I have chocolate in my chest, then God is good and I know. Incredible. It's Luther. The Sionists believe in indifferentism. They have a positive belief that we all of us need to forget about the differences between religions. Such mixing with all kinds of beliefs and unbelief is perilous for young Catholics. It's very dangerous for young Catholics to mix in, like the young Sionists mixed in. They mix in with all of these people who believe it doesn't matter what religion you belong to. That's these big youth meetings of the new church. They have these tremendous youth sessions in Rome. And it doesn't matter what religion everybody of every religion come along, and we're all going to dance through the streets. I remember in 2000 I was down in Rome, and there was, at the time of one of these youth meetings, and here were all of these youths, supposedly Catholic youths, just dancing through the streets as though it was one great party. What they did at night in the streets, I don't like to think. And that's what the church was encouraging, and that's what the church is still encouraging. That's what John Paul II encouraged, these great youth meetings. It's perilous, it's very dangerous for Catholics. Because what matters is not the party, having a party. What matters is what you believe, what you think. Have you got the truth in your system, or have you got lies in your system? It's an enormous difference. If you've got the truth, you're not going to be popular. And they may well kill you, like they did in the early church. But all of those martyrs of the early church, it's thanks to those martyrs of the early church that you and I are Catholics now. There will be no Catholic church to belong to if they hadn't all given their life for the truth. They were dying for the truth. They weren't dying for religious freedom. They weren't dying for their country. They weren't dying for their family. They were dying for the truth that our Lord Jesus Christ was God, is God, and that he died to save us, and you will go to hell if you don't believe it. And the emperors caught these 13-year-old girls, and they began torturing them, and they said, the emperor said, if you give up your faith, I will marry you to the most handsome young man, the most rich and most handsome young man in Rome, and you will have a marvelous house and everything you want, and any number of television sets and refrigerators and motor cars. And these young virgin martyrs said, no, Your Majesty. They respected the emperor. They said, no. You are worshipping a devil. I am worshipping the truth, and I will die for the truth, and you are worshipping a devil. And these 13-year-old girls said, I don't mind how you torture me, but I cannot say that Jesus Christ is not my God. He is my God. He is the truth. And these 13-year-old girls died for the truth, the virgin martyrs. And that's what made the Catholic Church. They're going to have to be martyrs tomorrow. They are going to be martyrs tomorrow. I'm reminded of the story of, I always remember when I mentioned martyrdom. There was this schoolmistress teaching this class of little children about martyrdom. And she was explaining that if you're martyrs, you will all of you go straight to heaven. And so she'd explain, of course, that they'll also have to die. If they die, believing in Jesus Christ, if they die for Jesus Christ, they will go straight to heaven without any more worry. And so she then said, children, do you want to be martyrs? And they all said, yes, 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 except little Johnny. Little Johnny seemed to be thinking about it. Johnny, don't you want to be a martyr? I want my sister to be a martyr. Well, you know, martyrdom is coming down the pike, as Americans say. It's coming down the pike. I hope any of us, or all of us, have the courage, the faith and the courage at that moment, because it's going to be an ugly moment, but it's the fast lift, it's the rocket to heaven. It just takes you straight to heaven. So, mixing with all kinds of beliefs and unbelief is perilous. It's very dangerous for young Catholics. However, the utopian civicism, in other words, this believing in being good citizens in a completely unreal way, utopian way, and which disparages the Christian city, which despises the way that Christians always used to build the city and civilization. It leads to socialism. And worse still, it leads to a universal religion of humanitarianism. That's exactly Vatican II. Pope Pius X had it nailed, absolutely nailed, as they say. In other words, he was, another expression, American, right on the money. He's right on the money. He understood perfectly which way the world was going in 1910. And he warned. The Catholic Church told the truth. It warned everybody. People knew, but they paid no attention. And so we've landed up in exactly what he warned us. A universal religion of humanitarianism. 40, another doozy of a paragraph. Thus, the Sion has fallen prey to the universal apostasy of the one-worlders. Back in 1910, Pius X knew that the world was going towards the one world. The New World Order that President George Bush, the father of this one, talked about at the time of the Iraq War. The New World Order of the Freemasons. the Jews, the communists, globalism. We call it globalism today. A global government. It's being put in place. They're preparing now over the other side of the Atlantic the union of the United States, Canada, and Mexico, and the dollar and the peso and the Canadian dollar are going to be replaced by one currency, like in Europe, the euro. They're going to call it the Amero, A-M-E-R-O. And it's going to replace the dollar. The dollar is now crashing, probably deliberately. If the dollar was still too strong, nobody would want the Amero to replace it. When the dollar collapses, then everybody will want the Amero, like the euro, which will be the strong new currency to replace it. And the Amero will be the currency that unites the three countries. And the nations will be dissolved in the internation, the internationalism of the globalists. That's the way the world is obviously going. Until the whole globe is turned into one gigantic, godless police state. And when it turns into a gigantic, godless police state, that's when the Catholics who still have the faith are certainly going to be persecuted. Because they won't go along with this. So wait for it. Wait for it. Pius X saw it coming. The CEO has fallen prey to the universal apostasy of the one world, the falling away from God, apostasy. Spelled with an S correctly, not a C. Seduced by Christ's well-known enemies. The Pope doesn't name them. Doesn't appear on the table. And the Freemasons. Seduced by Christ's well-known enemies into making the revolution their gospel. It's in the protocols of the sages of Sion. We are going to make ridiculous the governments of the Gentiles, the Goyim, until they call us in to govern in their place. And when we take over the government is no longer going to be ridiculous or ridiculed. And they are going to impose themselves in a very serious fashion. And it will all be nothing more nor less than if it happens, if God allows that to happen. And it may well happen under the Antichrist at the very end of the world. It will be no more nor less than a just punishment of the apostasy of the Catholics and the Gentiles. They make the revolution of the gospel, a revolution which falsifies true charity and completely disfigures the true Jesus, making him into a soft, sweet, nice, charitable sugar daddy. That's what they make of Jesus. He's all sweet and nice. Oh, fake with heart of Jesus. That's the real Jesus. The real Jesus took out a whip and chased the money changers out of the temple because they were dishonoring the Father. Not because they were dishonoring him, because they were dishonoring the Father. Jesus, our Lord, could take insults to himself, but he wouldn't take that much insulting his Father. And beware of insulting his mother. There's a famous case in England, there have been many cases in our history, but there was a speaker who was a Protestant speaker or whatever, and he stood up and he was making fun of the Mother of God, and he fell off the platform and killed himself. Our Lord is not mocked, and he will much more easily take insults to himself than insults to his mother. He won't take too much to his Father either. Christ is making the disfiguring the true Jesus. The true Jesus. You read the book of the Apocalypse, the book of Revelation, to see how severe Jesus is. How he threatens sinners with eternal punishment, again and again. Somebody was saying to me the other day, or just yesterday, the New Testament is all nice and the Old Testament is not nice. There's a clash between the two. Well, the New Testament is not all nice. Read the last book of the Old Testament for the threats to sinners if they misbehave and die in the disgrace of God. Ooh. Ooh. It's not sweet and nice. So this new religion completely falsifies Jesus and makes him into a softy, makes him into a wimp. He's not at all. So finally, Catholic counteraction. And he's got, notice he's got an instruction for the bishops. The bishops are always very important in the Catholic Church. I'm not talking about myself. The bishops are very important. You may remember in the Middle Ages, the clash was over who would appoint the bishops. Was it going to be the king or was it going to be the church? And Gregory VII had to fight for the church to control the bishops. And Henry, the emperor, wanted the state to appoint the bishops. Because both of them knew the bishops are where it's at. The bishops are where the power is. And so the Pope addresses the bishops. Be gentle, but firmly teach everyone their Christian social duties, not their rights, but their duties. Also appoint down-to-earth priests, not dream priests, who are half socialist and half communist. Down-to-earth priests to learn for themselves Christian social doctrine for today. And as what are the church's answers to the social problems of modern times? The church has got answers. The church's answers are in documents like these, the documents of the popes, Rerum Novarum, Quadragesimo Annum, Libertas, tomorrow night the syllabus, which is a condemnation of 80 errors of the modern world. And the priests need to know these documents and to teach these documents, which is exactly what Father is asking me to do tonight and tomorrow night, so that you get to know what the church teaches about modern ideas. The modern ideas are wrong, 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 which is why we've got such craziness today, where the world going mad and the world in very great danger. And then as for the Sionists, let the young Sionists cooperate and submit to you, the priests, the bishops. Let them give up their idea of changing the world and let them learn how the Catholic Church saves the world. And let the Zionist leaders hand the entire organization over to you, bishops. It's a drastic remedy, a very drastic remedy. But what the Pope is saying is, when people are in the grip of these liberal ideas, it's very difficult to get them out of it. And the only thing you can do is, the only way you can still get them out of it is authority. So he's saying, the Sion has got to hand itself over to the church authority. It's a drastic remedy, but there's nothing else will work. And what could he say today? Hand yourself over to the priests of Vatican II, join the Church of Vatican II, but the Vatican II is exactly this. The Sion has won. What happened in history is that Marc Saulnier, the leader of the Sion, submitted outwardly. He submitted to this. He said, well, the Pope is right, and therefore he agreed to the Sion being dissolved and handed over, but he himself continued with the same ideas under a different name. And the ideas continued. Because once you're in the grip of these dreamy ideas, it's very difficult to get out of it. Once you're into Hegelianism or Kantism, it's very difficult to get out. We had at the seminary those years ago a wise old priest called Père Barriel, and he was a disciple of the Spanish priest, Padre Valle, from Catalonia, who adapted the exercises of St. Ignatius to their modern form of 5 days. Have you had the 5 days being given in Sweden yet? Yes. Well, some of you know the 5-day exercises, you know how strong they are, and what a good protection, how they straighten you up and make you see clear again. Thanks in good part, to be able to make a serious and good confession. And then once I make a good confession, I can see a lot of things again as they really are and not as I want them to be. And Père Valle said, Père Barriel always used to quote Père Valle saying, liberals don't convert. That's a terrible thing. Just think about it. But you observe that liberals don't convert. It's terrible. They are locked into their dream. Marc Saulnier was locked into his dream. He obeyed outwardly. What hypocrites liberals can be. It's terrible. And they don't know it. They can deceive themselves. They've got a tremendous ability to deceive themselves. And they deceive everybody else. They deceive themselves firstly, then they deceive everybody else. Because they deceive themselves. And they think that they're very nice. They're convinced that they're very nice. They're convinced that they're very good people. And it's very difficult for them to get out of the dream, because the dream is so beautiful. And the dream is also a crusade. And liberals on a crusade. Pregnant women, don't drink beer. Because if you drink beer, you might do harm to the little child in your womb. We are starting a crusade to stop pregnant women drinking beer. And this crusade is going to save civilization. Because pregnant women will no longer drink beer. They are crazy. Liberals are crazy. But there's one crusade after another. What are some of the latest crusades? Anybody mention some of them?
Smoking.
Smoking. Smoking is a worse sin than abortion. You're absolutely free to commit an abortion because that's the woman's rights over her body. But smoking? If you smoke at the other end of the church, I'm going to get double pneumonia. I'm going to get lung cancer because you're smoking. Come on. A bit of common sense. It's going to take more than a bit of smoke to give me lung cancer. I mean, it's ridiculous. But there you are again. The liberals have to have a crusade. Christianity was a crusade. Christianity is a crusade. To save souls for eternity, to get souls to go to heaven instead of falling into hell. That's a real crusade. But when the priests no longer believe in heaven, they've got to have some other crusade. They go for communism. And when Christians no longer have a crusade, they go for the liberal crusade. Everything becomes a crusade. It's ridiculous. It's very sad and very serious. People are crazy today. Well, it's 8:30. There may be time, we're not as late as last night, there may be time for a few questions. If anybody has questions, if anybody's not, please.
What is so special with France, with the French Revolution, then the Sillon, and also Archbishop Lefebvre?
Yes.
What's the reason of that's taking place in France?
There's an English nursery rhyme about some little girl. When she was good, she was very, very good, and when she was bad, she was horrid. When the French are good, they're very, very good, and when they're bad, they're horrid. The Jews are the same. When the Jews are good, they're very, very good. And when they're bad, they're horrid. Some people are like that. They're either right up at the top or right down the bottom. The English, but the French think very logically. So if they get a good idea, they drive it right through its conclusion like Archbishop Lefebvre. If they get a bad idea, they drive it right to its conclusion like the French Revolution. The French are like that. That's the way they are. They're quite logical, they're clear thinkers, and they will think clearly to the evil end or to the good end. They will take an idea right through. Well, the English don't take ideas too seriously. It's just the way the English are. The English are saved by being illogical. If we were logical with our false principles, we would destroy everything. But then we have bad principles where we don't follow through. A bit of common sense kicks in and that saves us. It's very different from the French. The French don't have common sense. But they do have principles, good or bad. And they drive those principles right through. Obviously that's a caricature. That's an exaggeration, but that's broadly speaking. So this is the French Revolution again kicking in. But we are tremendously indebted to many of the books in your little display of books. Our translations will be translations from the French. A number of them will be translations from the French. The French are writers and thinkers and intellectuals, in the good sense and in the bad sense. They have that gift. Just like the Jews, if a Jew really converts, he is coming home, because the Catholic Church is deep down Jewish. And so he's, as St. Paul says, it's not a foreign branch being grafted onto the stock. When a Jew becomes Catholic, it's the original branch being grafted back. The Catholic Church belongs to them in a way. And when they convert, like St. Paul, when Saul of Tarsus converts, he flattens the world for our Lord Jesus Christ. And he's very, very good, supremely good. But when they're bad, they're horrible. It's one or the other. There's no halfway house. That's where some people are. It's all one way or all the other.
It says, be gentle but firmly teach everyone their Christian social duties. Can you give
The
us some
Christian
ideas
social
of their
duties.
social
The
duties?
Christian social duties today, I think society is shot. It's finished. It's over. It's too far gone. I don't think very much action in society is possible. What is still possible is action inside the family. That is not yet taken over by the police state. The public domain is largely occupied, taken over. You can't do anything against the newspapers. The newspapers are all powerful. By the stupidity of the people and by the punishment of the people, the newspapers, they allow the newspapers to think for them. You can't do much with people whose minds are shot, destroyed by the newspapers. In Argentina, a good politician would come up and say, this is a rich country, we can pay off our debts. Let's get out of the grip of the bankers. Within 2 days, the newspapers would have destroyed its reputation. Absolutely destroyed its reputation. You're powerless against the newspapers. It's terrible. The newspapers are vile, but they have this power as a punishment, a just punishment, by God, of the stupid people that are turned away from it. People will no longer listen to priests. There are no longer good priests, very few good priests still to listen to. But if the people would turn back to God, God would give them back priests, good priests. But the social action, I think, is largely over. That's an opinion. You don't have to believe me. You may well disagree. You're perfectly entitled to disagree. But where I think certainly action is still possible is in the family. Therefore, young men, young women, young men, take your responsibilities. The responsibility to be young men is to raise a family, is to act like a man, to choose by your reason a good girl who will be a good mother, and then the two of you make an absolute resolution before God. This marriage is going to last until death. I am never going to abandon this. I'm never going to be unfaithful to her, and I'm never going to be unfaithful to him. And you make a Catholic family. That's the best you could do today. That really is the best you could do today. Many of the young men today don't want to marry. They don't want to take responsibility. It's understandable, because everything is against marriage. It's very difficult today to make a marriage and make a family. The government makes it difficult. People make it difficult. My relations make it difficult. It's heroic to undertake to make a family. But I think that's the best thing that a young man or a young woman today can do for society. The social action. In English, there's an English proverb, you can't make bricks without straw. You can't make politics, sane politics, healthy politics, without healthy citizens, without healthy people. Today the people are unhealthy. The people are into the internet, they're into everything that you know about is on the internet. They're into pornography, they're into all of this. They're into liberalism, they're into liberty, equality, fraternity, they're into the media, they're into newspapers, they're into... You can't do anything with people like that. It's like trying to build... You can't make stairs with sand. You can wet the sand for a little while, the stairs may hold in appearance, but you start walking on the stairs, even if the sand is wet, it just collapses. You can't make something sane out of people who are not sane. 50 years ago, there was still some health in the people. 100 years ago, there was more. In the time of the Second World War, there was obviously some real patriotism amongst the Finns in Finland, and they were able to mount a serious resistance to the Russians, to the communist Russians. Today, would they be able to do that? Do the Finns still love their country? Does anybody today still love their country? Love of country is being dissolved. The country is being dissolved. The enemies of God are dissolving the nations. They're breaking them down. They're breaking down their pride, they're breaking down their identity by immigration, for instance. They're positively encouraging huge waves of immigration, and then into marriage they're encouraging. And getting that. Marry, if you're going to marry, choose a spouse as far as possible from your own background. Learn from the priest everything about Catholic marriage. Learn what it means to spell sacrifice. You're going to need to get to Mass the real Mass, in order to learn what sacrifice is. You're going to need to be able to sacrifice to keep the marriage, to maintain the marriage. You can't run a marriage on two selfishness. It won't fly. And you can't rely on your wife. You can't throw all the weight on the girl. The young men have got to lead. The young men have got to... There's a Russian proverb. The man is to the woman like the state is to the tomato plant. So there's the stake, and the tomato plant will wrap itself around the stake. If the tomato plant doesn't have a stake, the tomato plant is going to be in the mud. And if the man says, I want to be a tomato plant, then you're going to have two tomato plants wrapping themselves around one another, both in the mud. A man is not meant to be a tomato plant. He's meant to be a stake. Stiff, straight, rigid, to take the hits, to stand for something, to mean something. That's what a man is meant to be. And that's what, if social action, social duties, young men be men. And if you want to know what being a man means, learn from the church. Learn from literature of the past. Go and see what Siegfried is. He's a barbarian, but he's got some qualities. See what Wotan is. Wotan makes some serious mistakes, but he is a man. Unlike today's men. Today's men are unmanned. The women are unwomen. What's the duty of the women? The duty of the women is to be true women and to resist being turned into second-class men. The duty of the women, the social duty of women today, of young women, is to keep themselves first-class women and not allow themselves to be made into second-class men, which is what many of the poor girls do. And then, of course, modesty. You look at the streets of Stockholm, all the girls walking around absolutely naked from half the thigh downwards. They're dressed like they should be dressed for their husbands alone. That's it. And it's absolute. I can only guess what morals correspond to this style of dress. It's not only Sweden, obviously. But then what's the duty? The social duty of a girl is to dress in a Christian fashion, and to keep dressing in the Christian fashion, to resist public opinion, to resist what mummy and daddy say, to resist what the boyfriends say, and to raise everybody's idea of womanhood and of what womanhood needs to be, just by the way she dresses. That's an apostolate for a girl. And that's her social duty today. She's looking for action in society, dress decently. That's a huge action. It has an effect upon the women, and it has an effect upon the men. It has an effect upon everybody. And to put true Catholic girls back into social life is a tremendous social action. Let all the women dress decently. It takes courage when everybody else is practically undressed to dress properly, with dignity and grace. A lovely skirt, a long skirt, not down to the ankles perhaps, but there's nothing more gracious and feminine. It's beautiful. And that's social action for a girl. That the boys dress also with dignity. The men's dress doesn't matter so much. What matters is the men's ideas. The fashion for men. For women, the fashion is largely in clothes. For men, the fashion is largely in their ideas. Men don't swim with the current. You want social action? Think. Don't have soup in between your ears. Study and read. I don't think you can do much still. But you can think for yourself. And then talk to the priest. You don't have to agree with everything the priest says. If you've got a brain of your own, he's not infallible. I'm certainly not infallible. You're perfectly entitled to disagree, but talk it out. Talk it out with your friends. You've already got here a group going. It's admirable. It's admirable. Support one another. There's social action. Supporting one another. St. Paul says, look after one another, but especially those of the household of the faith. Now, as Catholics should especially look after other Catholics. As far as you can, form an alternative society, because man needs a society, and you need to belong to a group. The individual on his own can't do it. It's too much. A family on its own can't do it. And when you form one family, let another Catholic family move nearby. Nobody's going to be perfect. There's going to be arguments, divisions, but the families need one another. You need a group of families. One Catholic family on its own is going to lose. So that's where it's at today. It's not where it was in Pope Pius X's day. It's got much worse in the last 100 years. Much, much worse. So what he might have thought of as social action is not what's possible today. Today we're being pushed back into the last trenches. The family is the last line of defense. And it needs defending. By God, it needs defending. Yes?
I was thinking about what you said about false humanism, about from the French Revolution. I think today we have a subhuman level. People speak about animal liberation, animal rights. And they compare, if I have rights as an individual, I can automatically install rights. It's the same. I think today with this homosexual place, I think we have a subhuman.
Oh, absolutely. It's logical. You know, if you say that there's subhuman, we're passing on to subhuman rights, it's quite logical what's happening. The kings kicked out God. The aristocrats cut off the head of the kings. The middle class destroys the aristocrats. The working class, communism, destroys the middle class. And now, animal, vegetable, mineral is being used to destroy the working class. And so you've got animal, baby seals. Vegetable, you've got, the rainforest. And mineral, you've got, I don't know, save the rocks. You see, if the kings betray God, then the aristocrats are going to betray the king. The middle class is going to betray the aristocrats, the lower class is going to betray the middle class, and finally, animal, vegetable, mineral are going to betray human beings. It's a just punishment of God. The blindness is a terrible punishment of God. And liberals are blind. They're blinded. They can't see. St. Paul says the Jews are blinded.
Of course, animals don't have rights in that sense. But isn't it our duty to protect?
Yes, of course it is.
The animals and nature.
Have we got a duty to look after the animals and to look after nature? Of course we have. But today, that truth is exaggerated into a tremendous lie that human beings are less important than baby seals, spotted owls, the rainforests, and the rocks. So they've taken a truth and exaggerated it into a lie.
Yes, of course, that's quite that's almost self-evident. But there is a danger there, not to think of duty.
Not to think of
That's the only thing I want
duty. Well, yes, of course.
To protect.
Of course, we have a duty to look after animals. You can remember in one of Dostoevsky's novels the picture of the peasant beating his horse.
Yes.
And I forget which it is. Does anyone remember which novel that's in? Crime and Punishment, is it? Yes. And what is it? Is horrified by this.
The only thing I wanted to say was that there is a danger in the two arrogant thoughts.
I'd say there's a greater danger in completely misunderstanding human life.
Yes.
Human beings are more important. Animal, vegetable, mineral are there for human beings. So the greater error
Is every human life more important than every
Yes, it is.
Every animal. Is that
Yes, it is.
Is that without exception?
Yes, that's without exception.
In religion, yes.
In religion, yes.
But there is something which is called common sense too.
According to common sense. If common sense thinks, yes. Because the whole of the universe exists for human beings. That's the reality. Because human beings have a possibility of going to heaven, which neither animal, vegetable, or mineral have.
Yes, but that's religion, that's Christendom.
What? That's religion. Religion is life, my dear friend.
Yes, sir.
Religion is the key to life.
Yes, you say so, but
I say so.
yes, you do.
Our Lord died on the cross. Is that religion or not? Of course it's religion. You have an idea of religion, that religion is something sort of pushed over on a corner on the side, and then there's life that goes on alongside religion. That's completely false.
But to make that,
You have an idea that common sense and religion contradict one another. That's completely false.
to make that conclusion that every human life is so much more worth, has so much more worth than everything else in the
Take all of the horses, in the whole of the world and put them on one pan of a pair of scales. Put a poor Hindu beggar covered with flies on the other pan of the scales. Which weighs heavier?
Well, that's such a drastic example. And it's
That's what you're asking. That's your question.
Yeah.
Which weighs heavier? Are you able to answer your own question?
I refuse to answer.
In that case, let's move on.
Pardon me?
In that case, we'll move on. Next question.
Okay.
He refuses to answer his own question. Finish. Yes.
I was just going to think about, as I understand this lecture, it was very, very inspiring lecture, and I'm very happy that.
Come to the question.
Yes, a quick question. As I look at it, it's like the devil, as you speak of the devil, he likes to, as I said before today, to mix things together, that mix truth with error.
Absolutely.
Mix races together that don't speaks about equality, putting everything on the same
Yes.
so to speak.
The devil wants to level out what God created unequal.
And
Yes.
the main point is hierarchy. You have to have a hierarchy of values, a hierarchy of people in order to put everything together. Because if you start to move one stone from the other, everything will collapse. And I think it is relativism is at the core of today's evil, relativism. And it has a spiritual dimension. But I think that it comes, the modern errors comes from, as a Jews in society.
The prime problem of today is the refusal of God, the turning away from God,
Yes.
which is spiritual.
Yes,
At the heart of all problems today is the spiritual and religious problem.
yes. So,
Including at the heart of ecology, including at the heart of the treatment of animals, the treatment of animal, vegetable, mineral, everything is basically religious. Because we were created by God, we've all of us come from God, and we all of us human beings are designed to go back to God. And therefore the spiritual is the most important. What is your question? Come to the question.
yes. The question was actually to make a point. It was,
Well, are you asking a question or not?
I had a question in the beginning, but
Can you sum up your point in the question? Is relativism the most important problem of today? Is that a question?
yes, it is the most important problem is about the God. That leads to
The loss of God is by far the most important problem of today.
But it is like you take authority away, truth has an authority itself, and if you take authority away, it reduces the spectrum, it reduces the hierarchy. That is the point.
Well, if you lose God, you lose authority. Scripture says, St. Paul says, all paternity is from whom all paternity is named. And from God all paternity is named. All fatherhood is named. God is the model father, our Father who art in heaven. If you take away God, you take away fatherhood, you take away authority. And it's the loss of God which produces the loss of authority. It's because modern man has no more God, that he has no more idea of exercising authority, and he's no more a man. And therefore the prime necessity of today is that the men return to God and put themselves back under God. As Christ is the head of the man, so the man is the head of the woman. And then everything else will drop back into place, or would drop into place. Is there one more question? Yes.
Is this letter by the Pope in print for sale?
This document?
Yeah.
Yes, it certainly exists in French, English and German. Italian, I'm sure. Swedish, I'm not so sure.
And in a normal bookshop you can order it?
Father, do you know?
Possibly.
You might look on the internet.
The Catholic bookshop here in Sweden, you should be able to order everything from there.
But you can certainly order it on the internet. You can't find it anywhere else.
Could you explain the essential problem of Kant's philosophy?
Of Kant's philosophy? Oh boy. Yes, I can.
Yes, I know you can, but I want to hear it again.
I think I can. What Kant says, human knowledge is a complicated affair. Okay? It's a mixture of sensation and intellection, the mind and the senses. It's a combination of both. Human love is a complicated affair. A human being is a complicated affair. He's mixed of spirit and matter. Right? The spirit is not matter and the matter is not spirit, but man is both. He's the only creature that's both. The angels are pure spirit, a dog is pure matter. There's no spirit in a dog. And there's nothing in a dog capable of going to heaven. And that's why one poor, wretched Hindu beggar weighs heavier on the pan of scales than all of the horses of creation and all of the tigers, all of the lions, all of the elephants, all of the mosquitoes, all of the animals in the whole of creation could pile on one pan of scales, one poor human being on the other, and the human being weighs heavy. Because he can go to heaven and all of the animals can't. Right. But man is a material creature and a spiritual creature. Therefore his knowledge is a mixture of spirit, of the mind, and matter, of his eyes and ears and touch and the senses. And it's a complicated... How do the two interact? How does man's mind interact with his senses? Well, I'll give you an example of my life. You asked a big question.
I'm sorry.
It is crucial in a way. Okay, now, what is this?